The crystalline spires of diplomatic station Helios glittered against the backdrop of swirling nebulae, its neutral ground serving as the perfect setting for what would either be remembered as humanity's most brilliant diplomatic move or its most spectacular blunder. Ambassador Nora Harrison adjusted her emerald green suit jacket, a subtle smile playing on her lips as she reviewed the invitation one final time. "Ambassador, the Sarkeesian delegation has just docked," her assistant, Raj Patel, reported, his usual calm demeanor tinged with nervous energy. "Their ship is, well, it's basically a floating arsenal." "Perfect," Nora replied, tucking a strand of silver-streaked black hair behind her ear. "That means they got our message about bringing their ceremonial weapons. Did operations confirm the reinforced dining chairs arrived?" The Sarkeesians were notorious throughout the galaxy, 9-foot-tall reptiloids with iridescent scales and retractable bone blades along their forearms. They'd carved out their empire through conquest, considering diplomacy a sign of weakness. Which made Nora's invitation to a formal dinner party either incredibly brave or absolutely insane. "The chairs are rated for up to 2 tons each," Raj confirmed, scrolling through his datapad. "Though I still think we should reconsider the crystal stemware." A low rumble resonated through the station's deck plates, causing several nearby potted plants to shiver. The Sarkeesian delegation had arrived, their heavy footfalls announcing their presence long before they came into view. First Commander Keksari led the group, his obsidian scales reflecting the station's lights like polished armor. Behind him stalked 2 junior commanders, their bone blades partially extended, a clear violation of standard diplomatic protocol. "Ambassador Harrison," Keksari rumbled, towering over the human delegation. "You have either extraordinary courage or a death wish, inviting the Sarkeesian Empire to dinner." He pronounced the last word like it was a foreign concept, which, Nora supposed, it was. "First Commander," Nora replied with a warm smile, not backing away an inch. "I prefer to think of it as having excellent taste in dinner guests. I trust your journey was comfortable." Keksari's secondary eyelids flickered in confusion. The human showed no fear, no submission displays. Even more puzzling, she seemed genuinely pleased to see them. "Our journey was adequate. Though I fail to see the strategic value in sharing sustenance." "Strategic value?" Nora laughed, the sound echoing off the station's high ceilings. "First Commander, this isn't about strategy. This is about introducing you to slow-smoked brisket, hand-ground spices, and a bottle of single malt scotch that's older than most civilization space programs." The junior commanders exchanged glances, their threat displays dimming slightly in confusion. Humans were known to be unpredictable, but this was unprecedented. Most species either tried to appease the Sarkeesians or challenged them outright. None had ever invited them to what appeared to be a purely social gathering. "I should warn you," Keksari growled, leaning down until his face was level with Nora's, "that in our culture, sharing food with potential enemies is often a prelude to assassination attempts." Nora's smile widened. "In our culture, sharing food is how we turn potential enemies into friends. Though I should warn you too, Chef Lucia's habanero sauce might make you wish for assassination instead. Shall we?" She gestured toward the specially prepared dining hall. As they walked, Raj fell into step beside her, whispering urgently, "Did you just threaten the first commander of the Sarkeesian Empire with hot sauce?" "Not a threat, Raj. A challenge." Nora's eyes sparkled with mischief. "You know how they say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Let's see if it works for warrior reptiloids too." The dining hall doors slid open, revealing a table set with a blend of human elegance and Sarkeesian practicality. The reinforced chairs were draped with ceremonial cloths in the deep purple of the Sarkeesian Empire, while the table itself bore both Earth's finest china and traditional Sarkeesian warrior plates made from the polished bones of worthy opponents. "First Commander," Nora announced, "welcome to humanity's first interstellar dinner party. I hope you brought an appetite. We have 7 courses planned, and each one tells a story about Earth's history of turning adversaries into allies, one meal at a time." Keksari's expression was unreadable, but his bone blades had fully retracted, a good sign. As the delegation took their seats, the subtle hum of scanning devices filled the air as both sides checked for poisons, as was customary. The real question was, could human hospitality accomplish what centuries of traditional diplomacy had failed to achieve? The answer, as it turned out, would surprise everyone, especially the betting pool that had formed among the station's other diplomatic missions, who were watching the proceedings with a mixture of horror and fascination. Behind the gleaming doors of Station Helios's diplomatic kitchen, Chef Lucia Valdez orchestrated controlled chaos with military precision. Steam rose from massive pots, the sharp scent of earth spices mingling with the artificial atmosphere as her team prepared what could be the most important meal in human history. "Status report," she called out, reviewing the holographic display of timing sequences floating above her workspace. "Brisket's been smoking for 16 hours, reported sous chef Marcus Wong, monitoring the specially designed atmospheric smoker. Internal temperature holding steady at exactly 195 degrees Fahrenheit. The bark is, well, it's beautiful enough to make a Texan cry." Lucia nodded, making a minute adjustment to the smoker's settings. They'd spent months researching Sarkeesian biology, ensuring every dish would be not just edible but actually enjoyable for their scaled guests. The challenge had been finding the sweet spot between human flavors and Sarkeesian physiological requirements. "How's the spice situation, Devon?" she called to her spice master, who was handling the most delicate part of their culinary strategy. Devon looked up from their workstation, where they were carefully measuring compounds that would make ghost peppers seem mild. "Final tests confirm the capsaicin levels are within Sarkeesian pleasure-pain thresholds. Though I still think we're insane for serving this to beings who can literally disembowel us." "That's exactly why it has to be perfect," Lucia replied, moving to inspect the sauce. "Their entire culture is built around proving strength. We can't match them in physical combat, but this?" She gestured to the kitchen at large. "This is our battlefield." The kitchen doors slid open as Raj hurried in, looking slightly pale. "They're doing the ceremonial weapons display right now. Chef, I don't mean to rush you, but we need to show them humans have ceremonies of our own," Lucia finished, her dark eyes gleaming. "Marcus, begin plating the appetizers. Devon, final check on the wine pairings. Everyone else, positions." In the dining hall, First Commander Keksari was concluding his display of a ceremonial bone blade, describing in graphic detail how his ancestor had used it to unite 3 warring systems. Ambassador Harrison listened with genuine interest, occasionally asking questions about metallurgy and combat techniques that surprised the Sarkeesian leader with their technical precision. The kitchen doors opened, and servers emerged in choreographed precision, each movement practiced to prevent any gesture that could be interpreted as threatening by Sarkeesian cultural standards. The appetizers were presented simultaneously to all guests, a feat of timing that didn't go unnoticed by the military-minded Sarkeesians. "First Commander," Nora announced, "we begin with a dish that honors both our cultures. Chef Valdez has prepared what we call Dragon's Breath dumplings, a fusion of ancient earth techniques and spices that might actually challenge a Sarkeesian palate." Keksari's secondary eyelids flickered with interest as he studied the elegant presentation. The dumplings gleamed with a sauce that seemed to shimmer with warning colors, colors that, in nature, usually signaled deadly poison. His sensory organs detected complex chemical compounds that set off all his species' danger warnings, yet the humans were calmly preparing to eat the same dish. The junior commanders watched their leader carefully. Accepting food from another species was an act that required either supreme confidence or suicidal bravery. Keksari lifted the dumpling with surprising delicacy, considering his massive claws. "In human tradition," Nora explained, "shared discomfort can be a powerful bonding experience. I should warn you, even I find these quite challenging." That did it. No Sarkeesian warrior could resist a challenge so boldly presented. Keksari consumed the dumpling whole, followed immediately by his subordinates. For a moment, nothing happened. Then their thermoregulation scales flared bright red. By the first conquest, Kexari rumbled, his voice mixing shock and, was that respect? You eat this for pleasure? Only on special occasions, Nora replied, her own eyes watering slightly as she finished her dumpling. And always in good company. The junior commanders were trying to maintain their dignity while their scales shifted through various color patterns, the Sarkeesian equivalent of breaking a sweat. Yet none of them reached for their water glasses, turning this simple appetizer into an unspoken competition. In the kitchen, watching through the monitoring screens, Lucia allowed herself a small smile. Phase 1 complete, she murmured. Begin prep for the main course. Remember, timing is everything, we need the brisket to arrive exactly when their pain receptors are resetting. The evening was young, and humanity's culinary arsenal was just warming up. Sometimes, the most effective weapons weren't weapons at all, but rather the simple act of sharing something that brought pleasure and pain in equal measure. As the kitchen team moved into their next carefully choreographed sequence, one thing became clear: this dinner would be remembered in both human and Sarkeesian history books, though perhaps for very different reasons, last edited just now. The transition between courses flowed with practiced precision as the station's artificial sunlight dimmed to simulate a terrestrial sunset. The timing wasn't just atmospheric, it marked the exact moment when Sarkeesian sensory organs would be most receptive to complex flavors, a detail that hadn't escaped First Commander Kexari's notice. You've studied our biology extensively, he observed, watching as servers cleared the remaining appetizer plates. His scales had finally settled back to their normal obsidian sheen after the dumpling challenge. Just as you studied ours before accepting our invitation, Nora replied with a knowing smile. Though I notice your scans missed the aged whiskey we've been aging in orbit. Speaking of which. She nodded to Raj, who began the ceremonial pouring of the scotch. The liquid caught the light like amber fire, and the Sarkeesians' chemoreceptors flared at the complex bouquet of compounds. Junior Commander Vektari leaned forward, her bone ridges rising in curiosity. This substance contains ethanol. A poison. A poison that humans learn to refine into art, Nora explained, lifting her glass. This particular bottle has orbited Earth for 50 years, aging in zero gravity. The distillery that created it predates our first space flight. Kexari's inner eyelids flickered rapidly, the Sarkeesian equivalent of raised eyebrows. You took poison into space, for flavor. First Commander, Nora grinned, wait until you hear about our cheese caves. Before the Sarkeesians could inquire about humans deliberately aging milk proteins in underground chambers, the main course arrived. Chef Lucia personally led the presentation, her kitchen whites pristine as she directed the placement of massive platters. Distinguished guests, she announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who commanded flames and flavors with equal skill, I present Texas-style brisket, smoked for 18 hours over heritage oak. The technique dates back to human tribes learning to make tough meat tender through patience and precision. The Sarkeesians watched in fascination as she demonstrated the proper cutting technique, the meat so tender it barely needed the knife. Steam carried complex aromas through the air, triggering pleasure responses in both species despite their vastly different evolutionary paths. In ancient times, Kexari rumbled thoughtfully, our ancestors would show respect to worthy prey by consuming their flesh raw, still containing their strength. He paused, studying the perfectly rendered fat. This is different. You transformed the meat through mastery over fire and time. Different methods, similar respect, Nora offered. We honor the life given by making something transcendent from it. Though I should mention, we did include some raw offerings in deference to Sarkeesian traditions. Right on cue, servers presented small plates of carefully selected earth delicacies, tartare, carpaccio, and other raw preparations that had undergone rigorous safety screening. The junior commanders exchanged glances of surprise at this thoughtful inclusion of their customs. As they ate, the conversation flowed as smoothly as the aged scotch. Kexari shared tales of legendary hunts, while Nora countered with stories of human endurance hunters who once chased prey until exhaustion claimed it. The Sarkeesians were particularly impressed by accounts of early human tribes using their inferior physical capabilities to outlast stronger, faster animals. Your species turned weakness into methodology, Vektari observed, her usual military rigidity softening slightly under the influence of good food and better conversation. It's admirable. We prefer to think of it as working with what we have, Lucia interjected, having joined the table at Nora's insistence. Like this brisket, it starts as one of the toughest cuts, but with patience and the right technique. It becomes something greater than its origins, Keksari finished, surprising everyone with his philosophical turn. He lifted his glass of scotch, studying how it caught the light. Perhaps there is wisdom in transformation that we Sarkeesians have overlooked in our pursuit of strength. In the observation lounge above, the other diplomatic missions watched in amazement as the fearsome Sarkeesian warriors engaged in earnest discussion about cooking techniques with their human hosts. The betting pool had shifted dramatically, with heavy odds now favoring successful diplomatic relations. "Tell me, Chef Lucia," Vektari asked, her warrior's intensity focused entirely on the food, "this technique you call smoking, could it be adapted for Sarkeesian flame pods?" And just like that, culinary diplomacy opened doors that centuries of traditional negotiations had failed to breach. As Lucia launched into an enthusiastic discussion of different wood types and smoke profiles, Nora caught Raja's eye and nodded slightly. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned, though perhaps better than they'd dared to hope. The conversation around the dining table had evolved far beyond mere diplomatic pleasantries. As the evening progressed into what would have been late night on Earth, First Commander Keksari found himself doing something unprecedented in Sarkeesian history, sharing recipes with a potential rival species. "The secretion glands of the Nexilian beast," he explained, gesturing with his glass of scotch, "produce an enzyme that, when properly cured, creates an explosion of flavor that would complement this barbecue technique of yours." Chef Lucia's eyes lit up with professional interest. "Similar to how we use fish sauce in Earth cuisines. The enzymatic breakdown creates umami, what we call the fifth taste." She was already making notes on her datapad, mind racing with possibilities. Fifth taste. Junior Commander Vektari's head tilted, her scales shifting to a curious blue-green. "Your species categorizes flavors mathematically?" Nora watched the exchange with quiet satisfaction, noting how the Sarkeesians' formal military postures had relaxed into something approaching comfort. Even their bone blades remained fully retracted, a sign of trust that would have been unthinkable hours earlier. Actually, Raj contributed, surprising himself with his boldness. "Humans recognize 5 basic tastes, but we're constantly discovering new ones. Our entire history is marked by the search for new flavors, new combinations." Like these remarkable beverages, Keksari rumbled, examining his 4th glass of scotch with newfound appreciation. "You mentioned this was aged in orbit. A deliberate experiment?" "One of many," Nora confirmed. "Humans have a habit of turning everything into an opportunity for innovation. Even our mistakes often lead to culinary breakthroughs. Did you know that some of our most beloved foods were originally accidents?" The second junior commander, Zekskar, who had been quietly observing throughout the meal, finally spoke up. "Your species embraces chaos as a path to discovery." His tone carried both disbelief and intrigue. "We prefer to think of it as structured experimentation," Lucia explained, signaling her team to begin preparing the dessert course. "Like the scientific method, but with more immediate and delicious results." As if on cue, the servers emerged with what appeared to be gently glowing spheres of translucent material. The Sarkeesian sensory organs flared at the sight, detecting an impossible combination of temperatures and textures. "This," Nora announced with evident pride, "is Chef Lucia's interpretation of molecular gastronomy meets Sarkeesian thermal preferences. We call it Nebula's Heart, liquid nitrogen-frozen cream spheres with a plasma-heated core." Vektari's scales rippled with excitement, the first purely emotional display any of the Sarkeesians had shown. "You've weaponized dessert?" We prefer revolutionized, Lucia corrected with a grin. Though I suppose any sufficiently advanced cuisine is indistinguishable from warfare. The joke, surprisingly, translated well across species. Keksari's deep laugh resonated through the dining hall, causing several nearby glasses to vibrate. Perhaps this is why your species survives despite your physical limitations. You turn everything, even meals, into an opportunity for advancement. Speaking of advancement, Nora segued smoothly, we have a proposal for a joint culinary research initiative. Imagine combining Sarkeesian hunting prowess with human cooking techniques. A fusion of our culture's best attributes. The Sarkeesian leaders exchanged meaningful glances. In their culture, such an offer would represent far more than mere cooking collaboration. It was an invitation to share knowledge, resources, and potentially form the kind of alliance that had seemed impossible mere hours ago. Your species, Keksari said thoughtfully, watching the swirling colors in his dessert, has accomplished something no other race has managed. You have made the Sarkeesian Empire curious. In the kitchen, monitoring the proceedings, Devon whispered to Marcus, did we just achieve peace through dinner? Not yet, Marcus replied, carefully plating the final surprise of the evening. But we've definitely given them food for thought. 3 standard months after the historic dinner at Station Helios, the galaxy was still adjusting to the unprecedented sight of Sarkeesian warships escorting human culinary vessels through their territory. The fearsome apex predators of known space had developed an insatiable appetite, not for conquest, but for human cuisine. Status report on the cultural exchange program? Nora asked, reviewing holographic data streams in her expanded office. The success of the dinner had earned her a promotion and an entire deck of Station Helios dedicated to what was now called culinary diplomacy. Raj, now sporting the insignia of Deputy Cultural Attaché, pulled up the relevant statistics. 23 joint cooking academies established across Sarkeesian space. Chef Lucia's masterclass on smoking techniques has a waiting list of over 300 Sarkeesian warriors. And you'll love this, they're calling themselves gastroguards now. Through the office's viewport, a massive Sarkeesian dreadnought glided past, its hull modified to include what appeared to be an entire deck of smoking chambers. The fearsome weapon ports now shared space with temperature-controlled storage units for earth spices and aging facilities for various fermented human delicacies. First Commander Keksari's latest transmission just arrived, Raj continued, trying to suppress a smile. He's requesting emergency consultation on something called sourdough starter maintenance. Nora couldn't help but laugh. The mighty Sarkeesian leader, whose name once struck terror into the hearts of dozens of species, had become obsessed with artisanal bread making. His most recent military campaign had been temporarily delayed because he refused to abandon his starter during a critical feeding period. And the trade agreements? Exceeding all projections. The Sarkeesians are offering military protection for human food shipments, and several of their colony worlds have already converted military training grounds into agricultural spaces. They're particularly excited about growing earth chilies. A notification chimed, and Chef Lucia's hologram materialized in the office. She was aboard the newly commissioned HSS Julia Child, humanity's first dedicated culinary exploration vessel. Her whites now bore both Earth's emblem and the prestigious bone marks of an honorary Sarkeesian warrior chef. Ambassador, you need to see this, Lucia's hologram gestured excitedly. The Sarkeesians have combined their thermoregulation biology with our fermentation techniques. They're creating entirely new food preservation methods. The implications for long-range space travel are extraordinary. In the background of her transmission, several Sarkeesian sous chefs could be seen delicately handling earth herbs with their massive claws, their usual battle-scarred armor replaced with custom-made chef's whites. One was carefully crimping dumplings while another adjusted the temperature of a smoking chamber with the same intensity usually reserved for targeting systems. Any word from the other galactic species? Nora asked, already knowing the answer from Raja's barely contained grin. The Centaurian Confederation has formally requested their own dinner party. The Andromeda Alliance is suggesting a galactic food festival. Even the Rigelian swarm has expressed interest, though we'll need to completely rethink texture profiles for their consumption methods. Through another viewport, Nora watched as a small fleet of Earth vessels docked at Station Helios. Their hulls were emblazoned not with weapons, but with the logos of various terrestrial culinary institutes. Each ship carried a new generation of chefs, diplomats, and cultural attachés, ready to continue what the media was calling the kitchen conquest. You know, Nora mused, running a finger along the rim of her coffee mug, still the best diplomatic tool ever invented, in her opinion. When I first proposed this idea, the Defense Council thought I was insane. You want to invite the most dangerous predators in known space to dinner? To be fair, Raj chuckled, it did sound crazy. But then again, humans have a long history of crazy ideas working out. A final report flashed across their screens. The Sarkeesian Empire had just officially renamed their capital world's largest military academy. It was now the Institute of Tactical Gastronomy and Strategic Culinary Arts. Schedule a call with Chef Lucia and First Commander Keksari, Nora decided. I think it's time we discussed Phase 2 of our cultural initiative. What did you have in mind? Nora's smile was positively mischievous. I was thinking, Intergalactic Food Truck Festival. After all, if we're going to change the galaxy, we might as well do it one bite at a time. In the depths of space, aboard countless ships and stations, humans and Sarkeesians continued their delicate dance of cultural exchange, proving that sometimes the most powerful weapons in diplomacy were a well-seasoned skillet and the simple willingness to break bread with former enemies. The galaxy would never be the same, and it was absolutely delicious.